Hey, welcome to the latest episode of The Wellbeing Show. I'm your host, Noel, and it's good to have you back. I've got a fantastic guest on this week, Jo Dunbar, who's a medical herbalist. I hope I got that term right. She'll tell me in a second if I didn't. We're going to find out about that, about her. And it's certainly her work fits in with my sort of belief that I say holistic and she says integrative. It's like a bit like that potato thing. It's the same thing, but we spell it slightly differently or we pronounce it slightly differently. So we're going to find out about what that means, but very much within that philosophy of general health and well-being and looking after ourselves. So without further ado, just to say, obviously this is pre-recorded now, used to be live. So if you've got questions, do pop them to me, 07506 319 745. That's my phone pinging. And I can pass on messages to Jo. We'll also put some details how you might be able to see her website and things like that and get in touch with her as well. So do feel free to ask questions and we will get back to you when we can. So without further ado, hi, Jo, how are you doing?
Hi, Noel. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, good. Thanks for joining us. You're out in the beautiful wilds of Hampshire, right?
In the Hampshire Hills. I'm in the middle, almost the navel of the South Downs National Park.
Wow.
So I'm really lucky, really.
God, yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favourite places in the UK.
It's beautiful, yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I'm really lucky, Noel. I'm in a very friendly village.
Great.
Yeah, a really friendly village. Yeah. And
how did you manage that? Did you sort of research them or just was it blind luck?
No, I really truly believe in angels.
Do you?
I really believe, yeah. And my grandfather his life was saved by an angel.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a story if you ever want to, if you want to know. But I believe they brought me this little house because I was looking for a house. It was the only house I was looking at. And then I came and I saw it and I loved it, and then I left it. I thought, you can't buy the first house you like. Months later, I was still looking, came back, I liked it, and then it went. And then I thought, oh no, it's been sold. It actually had dropped in price quite a lot. So I came back again and I just thought, I'd like it.
That's the sign. Great. And it turned out to be a beautiful village, not a sort of hidden dark place with lots of strange people, but a very light which I guess is great for what you do in terms of having that sense of security and a safe home base in which to sort of support people and help people with their healing journeys.
Yeah, it's that safe. I keep forgetting to lock the doors at night.
Right.
I go down to unlock the door and I think, oh, why won't this door open? And then I realized I'd unlocked it before I went to bed, It's really safe.
Oh, how fantastic. How lovely. Yeah. So what was your journey to Hampshire? Because you don't sound like you're a native Hampshire person. You've got some sort of twang in your voice there.
Oh, yeah. I'm South African. I was born and brought up in South Africa.
Yeah. Whereabouts in South Africa?
Cape Town.
Cape Town.
In Cape Town.
I've not been. I've got a good friend who's over there in South Africa. She's South African, but she's going back to her roots and sort of. So that's what's it like? I mean, I hear different stories about Cape Town. It looks very beautiful, certain aspects of it, because it's right on the coast, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and well, look, it's a beautiful city and it's a beautiful lifestyle. If you can avoid being murdered, it's a wonderful place to be.
That's a good rule of thumb for life, I think.
Yeah.
If you can avoid being murdered, you're probably going to be all right.
A friend of mine said to me once, he said, darling, what's Cape Town like? And I said, darling, it's deadly, but it's beautiful. So it's like that, But it's not as deadly as Johannesburg. So I've never had any trouble. Never. Okay. I've had a lovely time. I love the people. They have been so kind to me all my life. So I personally don't have an issue. Yeah. But, you can be anywhere in the world and the next thing,
I live in Hackney in London.
Yeah. Seriously. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, one adapts to one's circumstances, I think. So
you do, and you learn to be a little bit more, on it when you're in, say, Hackney, and maybe down here you become a little bit more getting to lock the door at night.
So was your childhood Was it quite frightening being in the city, or did you enjoy it? Did you not notice these things growing up? It was a sort of stable home life.
Yeah. I had a very stable, extremely stable home life. I was very happy at school. I didn't pay any attention to the academic aspect of school. Not at all. I was only interested in friends and planning parties. Um, my academic career just, I was at the bottom. You know, honestly, I was the thickie in the thickie class. That's how I put it. Really, but actually, because of that, it brought me to herbal medicine. You know, it
Okay.
was, yeah, it was amazing. Because I thought I don't want to learn all those dates. I'm not going to do history. I wish I'd learned French. I wish I'd learned that, but I didn't. I was too lazy. So I studied. I did all the. You had to do English, Afrikaans. That's the language, Afrikaans. You had to do certain academic subjects that was required.
Mhm.
And geography and history to a level. Science, I did biology to the top level at school. But then I chose home economics and needlework. That's just when you're sitting around chatting and cooking, and it was quite fun. But the home economics was very good actually. They taught us nutrition, a lot of nutrition, and I still use that information today. They
Mm.
taught us how to cook, thinking about health, which
Ah,
actually
how interesting.
very useful. Yeah.
Yeah.
They taught us different diets, like an invalid diet. Nobody teaches you about that. So I use that with my patients who are very ill.
Mhm.
We talk about really simple, easily digested food. But yeah, the way it brought me to herbal medicine was, I think one of my teachers was equally lazy. And she said, do a project on anything. Imagine that, on anything. So I went to my dad's library and there was a book on herbal medicine. I thought, oh, I'll just do that. I'll just copy out of there. So I was copying out of there lazily, and I became obsessed. I was obsessed with herbs. And I was only about 14, 15 at the time.
Mhm.
And there was an area of my parents' garden they didn't use. So they gave it to me to make a little herb garden. So I grew a little herb garden. The cats used to come and they loved the herbs.
Mhm.
Um, and I wanted to be a herbalist. But back in those days, it was impossible. It was a medieval concept.
Right.
And even if I'd known there was such a thing, because I didn't, this is back in the 80s, even if I'd known there was such a thing in England, I would have never,
Cool.
never thought that I could afford to go to England or afford to study, even that I had the brains to be able to do it.
Mhm.
Never, it was impossible. So instead, I studied horticulture.
Okay.
Yeah, because I thought, well, if I can't heal with herbs, I'll grow them. Not that I knew who I was going to grow them for or where I was going to manifest this farm from, but that was what. So now the way it helps me now is I grow my herbs, many of them, and as you can see behind, I make my own tinctures.
Yeah.
So it was very
What
useful.
was, it's interesting why the sort of helping people side of things rather than yourself. So what
Sorry.
was the interest in being a healer, I guess? Was it because you were sort of reading this stuff and rather than just think, oh, I have to produce something for my teacher, you went, oh, okay, you can heal people, you can help people. Were you
Yeah.
attracted to healing people?
Not until that moment, but it was like I was born to do it.
Really?
Mm.
How
Nothing
interesting.
else. Nothing else was ever an option.
Right.
Herbal medicine. And when I finally qualified,
Uh-huh.
um, it's not easy to make a living in this world in complementary, especially herbal medicine. Like no one's ever heard of it. But when I qualified in '99, people said, are you a homeopath? I said, no, I'm a herbalist. They never heard of it. So it's hard to make a living. But and I wasn't with a husband who could support me. I just thought, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to make this work. And from day one, I had to earn a living, and so I
Yeah,
did. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it's interesting because let's just talk about because there is quite a lot of evidence now. Certainly for Chinese herbal medicine has had a lot of evidence, and you can get that now on the NHS. And I presume the same with medical herbalism as well.
With
Um,
Western herbal, yeah. Oh,
yeah,
there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of studies. All you need to do is look on PubMed.
yeah,
Yeah, you know, when it's very outdated when people say, oh, there's no evidence. Please, the only evidence in the room is that person hasn't looked for any evidence,
Yes,
because
I
there's
mean, I
a
agree with
lot
you.
of,
And my sort of because I'm more of a psychotherapist than I am the sort of biological stuff and the
mm,
nutrition stuff. So here's my take on it. I know very strong evidence around things called lifestyle medicine, for example, which is
yeah,
an evidence-based approach. And a core of lifestyle medicine, one of the 4 pillars of it, is diet
yeah,
and sort of eating an appropriate diet, and herbalism would be part of that, I imagine, a part of an extension of that. This sort of, so the herbalist process is to look at those helpful things within nature, particularly herbs and plants, etc., and to make concentrates of them. Yes, you call them tinctures, I think.
yeah. I think so, Noel. So, for instance, if I'm working with a patient, we always will almost always, you know, if it's not appropriate, we don't. We talk about foods, so healing foods that you
Sure.
can, first of all, avoiding that which isn't useful
Yeah.
in the diet and bringing in, and always giving alternatives. Because if you say to someone, you can't have dairy, you can't have sugar, you can't have wheat, they're going to think, well,
What's left?
what's left? Yeah,
A few
yeah,
insects that I'll find in the corner or something.
yes. I can gnaw on a Brussels sprout, you know.
Although I have to say I quite like Brussels sprouts, but you know, if
And,
they were the only thing I was allowed, I'd get a bit
that's
bored.
right. If it was your main diet, you might get a bit fed up. So you have to always say to someone, look, if you can't have cheese, and you know, some people like vegan cheese, some people don't. So if you can't have cheese, you can always have avocado, hummus. You give people options. If you can't have bread, you can't have wheat, you can have oat biscuits or rye bread.
Yeah.
Always options. Otherwise, they just get depressed and hopeless. That's no
Yeah,
good.
quite. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's about finding sort of a healthy diet that is also varied and interesting and exciting for people. So,
Always it's for that person. But then I will talk about domestic herbs or culinary herbs, peppermint, you know, and herbs that you can find in your garden. But then my stuff, it's more medical.
yeah,
It's not like that stuff that you see behind me.
yeah,
And oh, look to the side of me. You know.
great. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, those are more medical. They're not the sort of thing you might find in your kitchen cupboard. Although I give a lot of information on free information to people how to use
Cool.
turmeric or ginger to make yourself healthy or stay well,
Yeah,
because it's nice to feel empowered. I'm very keen on that
yeah.
people should feel empowered.
And it's also, I think, again, as a professional who's qualified, trained, and experienced, you probably have the same frustrations I do about seeing people on TikTok, etc., who don't know what they're talking about, but are selling nonsense to people. So
Yeah,
I guess you sort of, I mean, I know you don't have television, but I presume you see some of these things about people who quite clearly don't know what they're talking about and not qualified. So tell me about, like, in general, the field of medical herbalism. What sort of issues are you helping people in general deal with?
mm. Well, almost everything,
Okay.
really, a wide range, almost like a naturopathic GP, you know.
Okay.
So the big thing now, and I cannot believe, I'm sure you agree, stress and anxiety
Yeah.
through the roof. I
Yeah.
I don't.
Without a doubt.
It's
And of
so
course,
sad.
that is inflammation and poor sort of responses in the body, etc. People don't understand that stress is a hormone that produces physical changes in your body.
Exactly. So with the higher level of stress and anxiety, because there's the anxious, that's fear. Then there's stress. I've got so much to do, I can't cope. But up goes the adrenaline, up goes the cortisol, down goes the immune system.
That's right.
Then you start burning out. Then you've got chronic fatigue syndrome, you know, or systemic.
Let's just explain to people why these things are not very helpful. So, adrenaline itself will last about 45 minutes in people's bloodstream. As long as you don't get another spike, it'll just go away. Cortisol really is the damaging one, and cortisol is damaging for a number of reasons. From a psychological perspective, it will produce mood changes, which can become chronic in people, and people can develop mood disorders such as anxiety and depression as a result of cortisol. Cortisol also goes into your muscles as opposed to your bloodstream, because it's there as part of your fight-flight response to give you explosive energy to fight or run away. And that's the only way you get rid of it, is by doing something like that.
Yeah, but
Don't do something like that. It just stays in your muscles and it builds up and builds up. And it produces, and one of the things cortisol, so that people understand in the context of this conversation, why is it problematic? So one thing cortisol does that most people don't know is it shuts off your immune system, because if you're in a fight with a tiger or somebody who's got a sword or something like that, you don't need white blood vessels. You don't need to waste time with white blood vessels trying to stop a wound become infected. You want all the red blood vessels available to continue to give you explosive energy. That's what it's for. So literally cortisol switches off and damages your immune systems. So if you have lots of cortisol in your body, we know this, you get ill a lot because your immune system is switched off. It affects your eating because cortisol has an impact on your stomach, and it's designed to make you vomit before a fight so that you're not full of food, so that you have energy to fight, etc. So cortisol has a range of biological processes, and we all have far too much cortisol producing events in our life these days, called things like the pandemic, the cost of living crisis, called somebody being unpleasant to us while we're driving, which produces these spikes in these stress hormones. So that's the context, folks, and that's what we're talking about here. So that's just a little bit of background knowledge as to why both of us think adrenaline and in particular cortisol are not really happy things to have in your body. Sorry, Joe, I thought it was just useful.
No, fine, absolutely. And so, yeah, that's why it makes people more, high stress all the time. There's a virus going around, your immune system's down, bang, or you burn out because you're just producing all this cortisol, your adrenals burn out, and you then have what you might call chronic fatigue, ME, or burnout.
Yeah.
But the other thing, more secret, people might come along and say, oh, I'm really bloated all the time and headaches. And of course, if you've got high cortisol, it shuts off your parasympathetic. That's your digestive, rest and digest. So when you relax and able to digest, shuts it off, but you still might eat.
So for people who don't know, we're just going to explain this term.
Okay.
So the central nervous system reacts in two different ways. The sympathetic, which is active, do things, and we need it to be able to move around, make decisions. Yeah, it's part of fight flight, but we need the activation anyway just to get out of bed. If you didn't have an active central nervous system, your muscles wouldn't contract, you wouldn't be able to stand up, you wouldn't be able to do anything at all. So it's natural to be active. And then we have the parasympathetic response, which is the relaxation side of things. And we need both of those to be healthy. And the parasympathetic nervous system can be overwhelmed and we can go into shutdown. That's what you're talking about, Joe. Yeah. So that we're active all the time. We're like this, and then it gets too much for us, and then we just crash. We crash and burn, become.
And it's the same as you saying when you're attacked by the tiger or the guy with a sword.
Yeah.
You're not thinking food. You're thinking, I've got to do something. So the digestive enzymes get shut off.
That's right.
But when we live with too much cortisol and we're slightly tight in our stomach, we're still trying to eat, but the food goes in, but it's not been broken down. So it starts to ferment. It almost rots in your stomach, and then you get these toxins and leaking out. So, okay, so going back to your question, biggest thing, I see hormonal issues, like female hormone, male hormone problems, anxiety, fatigue, like viral infections.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Many different things. Yeah.
And that's because the body is out of sync, I guess, because of these. It's a sort of biological response to having an environment in which we're living in, which is not helpful for us. So that's one side of thing. What about people who might have congenital issues as well? They're born with certain types of problems. So certain people can be. Are you also treating those sorts of things? So if somebody has Crohn's disease, for example, etc.
Usually, yeah, people come with Crohn's disease. I haven't seen Crohn's for a little while now.
Yeah.
Get a lot of irritable bowel. It's not really congenital. It's more like an acquired.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, usually. Yeah.
So I'm interested. So you were in South Africa and you were a child, you decided academia was not for you, but somehow your smart teacher just thought, how do I get this kid who's not interested, and said, all
I
right,
don't know if she was smart, but anyway.
whatever. She was lazy, according to you, but mate, she sounds quite smart to me. She gave you free rein, didn't try and shoehorn you, and you found an interesting book, which is a lovely story, to be honest, and that set up a career path. But you were in South Africa still at that point. What's the next steps? You do this, you think, oh, this is what I want to be, but you change in horticulture.
It's an amazing story, actually. It's sort of a miracle, really, because I studied horticulture. I then got involved in landscape design, and I was working with landscape architects. And then I met someone, we're going traveling overseas. So we're just backpacking around, ended up here. I got the job, a really nice job, as a head gardener for a very beautiful estate up in Suffolk.
Yes.
And it was owned by, obviously, a very wealthy man. And he was a very wealthy man, a nice guy, very nice guy, and a nice family. And then he had just bought this huge estate. It looked like Buckingham Palace. And he was redesigning all the gardens. And he got, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use names, so I'm just going to say he employed a very well-known and very clever landscape architect. Nice, also very nice guy. And my boss and the landscape architect said to me, Jo, we want you to go and look at all the gardens in the country and get ideas. Wow, what a nice job. So I'm charging through London in my little banger, and I see over there the Chelsea Flower Show. I had no idea what that was. And there was a car parking space directly opposite. I wouldn't have stopped. So I threw my car into the car parking space, leapt out the car, and walked over the road. I had no idea that you had to book these tickets months in advance. And someone came up.
Years in advance now.
Yes, anyway, I had no idea. And someone came up to me. She said, "Do you want my ticket?" I said, "Oh, thank you very much." Unbelievable, isn't it? And I walked in, and my eyes fell to the left, and there it was, the National Institute of Medical Herbalist.
Oh, wonderful!
And just like that, my allegiance switched from design to that's where I want to be. And I went up to them and I said, "Oh, do you do courses?" They said, "Yes, there's a 1-year course for lay people, or there's a 4-year course for professionals." And I thought, well, I'm never going to be a professional, but I could do year 1 of the 4-year course, you see. And then when I passed year 3, I remember I sat down with a plop on the ground and I thought, oh, I'm going to be a medical herbalist. Really, I couldn't believe it. And then after that, I did a master's degree, MSc, Master of Science degree. Now this makes me smile because my biology teacher, my sister told my biology teacher, Jo's done an MSc, and she went,
what?
Well, miracles never cease.
So, that is quite a shift, isn't it? So clearly it wasn't true that you were the dummy. It was just you weren't interested.
I wasn't interested. I was interested in parties and, having fun. And I think that's quite cool. Why not? For you young, you should have fun.
This is an opinion I have. It's shared by a lot of people. It's still an opinion. I think we shoehorn children far too early. We put too much pressure on them. I'm worried about my own boy and the academic pressures, particularly because he's got ADHD, and boys with ADHD can struggle in schools, and he's all right at the moment. But I don't think our school system is very good at the moment.
I don't think so. I think the kids are under so much pressure. I feel so sorry for them.
I agree.
The way we used to laugh, we'd literally fall over laughing so much.
Yeah.
And we still do, my generation.
I was educated in the old, what was called the liberal education system. So it was a holistic child. You would find what the child was interested in, and teachers would have big arguments with the government about curriculums and stuff like that, and say, stuff you in your curriculums. But now curriculums are God. Not the child, not the child's needs. And
no,
I know. And in the UK at the moment, we have the highest number of absences from school ever in the history of schools. And rather than listen to that and say, kids are telling us schools are not working,
Yeah,
they're going to bring in more punishments for parents.
I
It's
know.
not extraordinary.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
it
the
makes us
children don't
believe.
want to go because schools are so horrific, and teachers don't want to go. It's like
No,
nobody
no.
wants to go to our schools. So, and that's global, I think. It's sort of all over. And that, I think, connects with this. Why we have so much stress and anxiety and depression and problems in our society is that we're organizing things in a way that are anti-human.
Anti-human, yeah.
They
Yeah.
really are.
And detached from nature. I think there's a lot of solace
Yeah,
in it.
I'm interested in the horticulture because I don't know if you know, but there's a thing called the biophilic effect, which is a term I'll explain to people. There's evidence of a shift in our consciousness and a shift in our bodies, how our body functions when we're out in nature. And we don't need to be up a mountain for that effect. There's been research in Canada that has shown if you notice a tree at your bus stop in the city, you'll get this effect. That's how powerful it is. And there's research around, for example, in inner city areas, if you build a park in an inner city area, violent crime in the area of that park will drop by 20%.
Wow.
Isn't that extraordinary? Just simply because you put a bit of nature there. And what it does is, what nature, this biophilic effect, what it does is it increases a human being's sense of connection. Isn't that just like you go for a walk in the park and you'll suddenly feel, now that's such a turnaround in our understanding, because when I grew up, we were told parks were dangerous places.
Yeah.
We were told that's where all the muggers hung out and you would get mugged or beaten up or stuff like that. And now we know that nature and parks are exactly where you go. And we also know that this effect has something similar to mindful meditation. So there's a shift in consciousness, which I'm sure you're aware of. And I'm interested because it seems to me that this herbalist book, also this move into horticulture, was still, you were looking for healing and ways of healing, because that's I think of gardening. I have a gardener in my company who goes and works with people with long-term mental health problems, because we know that gardening is not just healthy physically. People think about physical exercise, but it is psychologically.
Yeah.
It is really healing for your mind. And were you aware of that? Were you noticing that as part of your journey as well? I mean,
well, when you brought up in Africa,
right?
even Cape Town, which is very much the most cosmopolitan part,
Yeah,
there was a very strong connection with nature. Always, we love Table Mountain. We call it the mother city, and the mother is the mountain.
yeah,
So yeah, we have that strong connection. And then of course, the local guys, they have a very strong connection with nature. And of course we're talking to them, so they're sharing that. That's part of our world. And the animals as well.
yeah.
The elephants, the lions are, or certainly for me, and still are, very much part of my consciousness.
Right.
So the connection with nature. In fact, I mean, I love to go on safari, just to be a million miles, as far away from civilization as possible, and just to be still and watch the elephants, or just be there.
I'm a wilderness camper. I've got all the kit. I'm a bit of a nerd about it, but I can't think of anything better than being in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere.
It's
Yeah.
just wonderful, wonderfully healing experience. It's also, and again, like in terms of recovery from problems, one of the things I will do with patients is suggest that they buy some plants and start looking after them.
Yeah.
Incredibly healing experience. Or get a pet, an animal that you
Yeah.
nurture and care for at home.
Yeah.
It will transform your life.
It does. Yeah. But also, I mean, when I'm talking to my patients, people like to know which herbs are in their prescription.
Yeah.
And I explain, and very often it might be something that they know, like fennel, for instance.
Okay.
And then I explain, this herb does this, and this herb does this, and this herb does this. And it kind of blows people away.
Yeah.
And it brings a connection, because it's not just a bottle of horrible tasting brown stuff, but you know the plants, some of them, you know the plants, and then you have a connection now,
Okay.
a sort of point of reference, really. So when you see fennel, I do say to people, for instance, if I use hawthorn, I say, you know, that the hawthorn helped your blood pressure, or helped your heart, and they can help significantly.
Yeah.
I mean, miraculously. And I'll say, next time you walk past, people often say, "Oh, thank you, Joan." I say, "Don't thank me. I'm just the messenger. You thank the plant." So next time you go past the hawthorn tree, you know, just thank it, hold its leaf, and say thank you.
Yes, I love that. I love that idea. So
Yeah.
as we're talking a bit more technically about, this is your field now. So in terms of, are there herbs that are medicinal and herbs that are not? Is there sort of a general grouping of things that aware of, and how do you produce things, and how do you sort of assess people and know what is needed, and how do you measure the results, and how do you keep it safe, all that sort of stuff? So let's begin to answer some of those more technical questions, if you like. So first of all, your training took 4 years or 5 years?
It's 4 years, and then I did a master's degree. But I mean, it's a lot more than that. I'm just signing up for a course in mushroom medicine.
Okay.
I've just bought a book on naturopathic oncology, which is cancer. You never stop.
Yeah.
All your life you're studying, you know, that's why I got all these books. You just never stop.
Yeah.
The formal was 4 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to say, because this is part of what I have to do as a registered and regulated health professional, is if you suspect you've got a serious condition such as cancer, your first place you go is your doctor, and you would agree with this totally, Jo. And then you want to work alongside complementary and integrative therapists, that's cool, and you make sure your doctor knows about it, etc. Right? So
you have to.
I know you know that, but I'm just going to say that for people.
No, you have to say that, because you're absolutely right. You have to say that.
Yeah.
And
you would always, as I guess, as part of your intake, if somebody's got conditions, you're saying, have you discussed this with your doctor? There would maybe an appropriate conversation for you to have between somebody's GP or their specialist and you, so they understand what's going on, right? It's that. This isn't something hidden in the corner, some sort of strange thing. It's mainstream, and people should understand this.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, very often people ask for the list of herbs so they can give it to their doctor to.
Exactly. So walk me through. I mean, I know your training took a long time, and your ongoing, continuing professional development and your experience over the years, and it's difficult to try and condense that. But for a layperson like myself, walk me through what might happen if I come to see you, and how you might assess me. I'm going to make up some symptoms for you. We'll have a little role play, if you like, and then you sort of tell me a couple of the sort of herbs that might help and why. I think that might be useful and interesting. That'd be interesting for me as an experience. Does that sound okay?
Oh, yeah.
So I come in and see you, and I say, "Oh, I've got these chronic problems." What would be the sort of process in terms of?
Well, mostly, you know, someone comes in and you have a conversation. You know, tell me, how can I help you? What are you feeling? What's going on with you now? So they tell me what's happening now. They'll tell me how it happened, like how has your health been up until now? Then we'll discuss, are you on any medications? Are there any allergies? Of course, you have to take into account medications. Then we'll talk about diet. Then we'll talk about, try and unpick what is the underlying cause of your problem? You know, so say it's arthritis, or if we try and work out, is it just wear and tear? Is it a reactive arthritis, for instance? If it's a reactive arthritis, what to? Let's see if we can work this out. Sometimes we need to do laboratory tests, and I'll always say to someone, look, I think this test would be useful. This is what it costs. Are you okay? Because there's always a financial limit to what people can, and maybe we have to slow that process down to make it viable. So once we've worked out what's going on with the person, and then I'll say, look, if we unpick it, I think this is what's going on, and these are the herbs I suggest, and this is why, because this herb deals with this and this herb deals with that. So let me think of something that happened just today. There is a man I know, a patient of mine. he's sorry, I know a lot about him, but let's just say he's got a very stressful job.
Yeah.
He's going he's going abroad on a business trip. It's going to be 16 hours a day. His wife is not well. She can't afford to catch a virus at all. So he said, Jo, there are going to be thousands of people. I'm working 16 hours a day, and it's going to be quite stressful. So I said, that's fine. So we'll do antivirals. We'll do antivirals, which also help to keep his blood pressure down, because there's a family history of blood pressure. We're going to do herbs for strength and stamina, particularly mental, so that he's on it, you know. And maybe we'll do some calming herbs as well. And what else did we do with him? I can't quite remember what else we did with him. Just to give you that sort of idea, you know, so try and keep it current with the presenting condition, but also bearing in mind the background. And then with this guy, it's a rolling, it's an ongoing thing. But with someone who actually comes with me as a patient for the first time, then we have to work more intensely until we either have cured the problem, or in many people's case, they just want their immune system sorted, they want to feel calm, they want their brain to be working, their digestion, so they just like to have a rolling.
So you're literally working across the range from acute presentation to chronic and long term, and you can sort of work with acute presentation, fix the problem and say, that's it, won't see you again, that'll sort you out. Or you might work with people with long-term chronic conditions.
Yeah, it might be long-term chronic conditions. It might just be lifestyle. People choose for instance, they might want their hormones supported as they go through the menopause.
Right.
And then once they're well, I'll say to them, you know, off you go. I'm never going to retire, so you just call me if you ever need me. I'm here.
Okay. And in terms of liaison with other professionals, I guess you have to do that on a regular basis with people, particularly if somebody's got chronic and long-term conditions. So they'll be working with other people. There's probably a team around. Do you work with things like chronic conditions around dementia, for example, and that sort of stuff? I mean, it's a growing area of concern.
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
Mostly, if someone has a concern about dementia, their doctor knows all about that. They might want to take herbs, and then I'll prescribe some herbs, and they have the list which they can show their doctor. Very often their doctor says, fine, go ahead, you know. For instance, another example, I know I can freely talk about my partner who has had severe cardiac failure. So I'm touching wood, because he was very, very ill.
Wow.
And now it's not so bad. He's done very, very well.
Right.
And his doctor and his cardiologist say, we don't want to know what you're doing, but whatever you're doing, don't stop.
Brilliant. And
that's often the case. The doctors, I mean, they don't know our herbs, and they haven't got the time to know them. So they'll probably glance at it.
Well, here's a little secret. Often the doctors don't know the medication they're prescribing. They just know it's listed as a prescription for your condition. There's no way anybody can know all this knowledge. And I think that's one of the big differences between sort of what's called allopathic medicine, or the Western approach, and medical herbalism, the integrative and holistic medication. Tell me I know you prefer the term integrative and complementary medicines. Is that correct? Those are your preferred terms to describe?
Not really. I do differentiate, Noel, because holistic, I love the term holistic. Okay. And I think holistic is, you can start with a person, this is your problem, and these are the herbs. Then we can think about your diet and your lifestyle. That's another layer. Then we're looking at what your lifestyle is related to your family and friends. Then your community, it can go out and, how much time are you spending in nature, which I'm very big on that.
Yeah. I'm with you on that one. The more time you spend in nature, the healthier you're going to be, full stop.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I don't know if you want to bring this in, but I work as my spiritual practice is druidry, which is nature-based. Mm-hmm. And so I bring that into my practice as well, because people love it, because it belongs to this land and people really resonate with it. So that's what I call holistic. Integrative, I call, is when you and the doctor or the osteopath or the psychologist, we're working together and we're communicating. We're all working together with one person.
Yeah.
That's what I call more integrative.
And what would you call complementary medicines? That's another term that people might come
Yeah,
across.
complementary. So that's when, for instance, with my partner, he's on mainstream medicines. He has to be on those. And I'm giving him herbs which complement those, but
Right.
don't interfere. So,
Yeah.
for instance, he has warfarin, so I can't give him garlic because it's a blood thinner, 2 blood thinners. So I'm complementing what he has and supporting it. That's what I call
It's also, I think you're making a really key point there. You have enough knowledge to understand that.
I have to.
Right. Yeah. And so because otherwise you'd be putting your patients at risk if you don't understand these, what are called contraindications.
Yes, it's very, and it can happen just like that. Someone can be on warfarin, then they can wander off and decide, oh, I'm going to take some ginkgo because that's really good for my brain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have some garlic or fish oils because I know they're really good for me. And the next thing, you've got a bleed.
Yeah.
It's very easy to do.
It's also, I mean, I think people will have come across the more common experiences. Some of the common medications that you might be able to buy over the counter say don't drink with grapefruit. Because there are contraindications in that juice towards some types of medications. Yeah. And it's really important, I think, for people to understand that I'm constantly telling people, don't diagnose through Google and don't treat yourself through Google because the knowledge is so partial. You're the same as me, right? You're sort of head in hands about this sort of.
Well, no, because it reminds me of when I was a student and we were studying pathology.
Right.
And you think, oh, I've got that, and I've got that, and I've got that. You think you've got everything. But of course, when you see somebody else, they've got a little cooler aspect, a little cooler, and maybe a bit more experience. And say, look, you don't have that. You've got it. Like I thought I had something called ankylosing spondylitis, which is when your spine stiffens. Well, I was a student. I was looking after some horses at the time, and I always had a sore back.
That's right, of course.
So now I would have said, no, my love, you've got a sore back because you're bending over all the time, scooping out horse poo. Right. You don't have ankylosing spondylitis.
I know. I've diagnosed myself with many things during my training.
Yeah,
of course. Fairly sure I should have been locked up for a long time during my training.
You do. And when you're in your lessons, you think, oh no, my life's falling apart.
There's a term I like, which is, normalization. So there are certain things like for example, when we talk about stress, so you and I what we're talking about is when it's gone over the edge and but a certain amount of stress is normal in life. And a good example for me is I get very concerned, for example, that psychological practitioners are pathologizing things like loss.
Yeah.
And grief. These are natural, normal things that human beings go through.
Yeah.
They're not a pathology. It's not an illness. It's a response to having lost somebody. And there's no way that should feel pleasant. It should feel unpleasant.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt. And being hurt and experiencing loss is because you've loved somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a natural balance of life. And so I get really concerned about this over pathologizing that goes on. And I do blame Google for it.
I mean, and also a bit of stress is really healthy. It gives you an edge. Or, if you have a disaster in your life, and who hasn't?
Yeah.
If you've got resilience, I think that's important. It's helping someone build resilience. Because if you've got resilience, you can take a breath and think, okay, this has gone horribly wrong. So where am I going to go now?
Yeah.
And someone who's been taught resilience can cope with stress.
Right. That's right.
And build a whole new world. And usually it's better.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting. I was just talking with my son's mother. We're not a partner, but we co-parent. And our son had a knockback he missed a goal in a football match and he felt really bad about it. And he has genuinely felt awful about it.
Yeah.
But he is resilient. He's resilient because he's loved. He'll be fine. And he'll learn from it. In fact,
he'll learn. Yeah.
But he'll get better at football. That's what will happen.
Well, that's the thing, because if you look back, you can always see the silver lining. There was
That's right.
always a reason. And I think if you can help people to find the silver lining when they're in the drama, suddenly you can change the context from disaster to potential.
And that's connecting to your interest in the spiritual side of things. I'm not much of a spiritual person, I have to say, but there is plenty of evidence to show that a spiritual outlook is precisely that. Finding higher purpose and meaning in a moment of suffering means that you're more likely to transform that suffering into a life lesson that is helpful for you.
That's right, yes.
And
yes.
that's a very much part inbuilt into the spiritual sort of path, is this idea that when things are tough, that what we're doing is learning a lesson, and when you put it in those terms, people go, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And I remember during the pandemic counseling people about that. There's a reason for this. And you don't need to know what the reason is. You just need to accept that there's a reason. As soon as you start accepting there's a reason, and at some point you'll figure out what it is, it eases.
Yeah.
The suffering genuinely eases. And people don't need to know why. They just need to know that it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell me about this spiritual path and how you got involved in it. Certainly Druidism is a very ancient sort of part of UK culture, for example.
Yeah. I did go quiet because I was listening quite carefully to what you were saying. Druidry, so it's actually quite, it is ancient, but we're modern Druids, remember.
Okay. Yeah.
And there wasn't an awful lot of information, although there was more information than we think left over from there. But I think there's an animistic point of view that the world there's a thread that runs through everything, that there's a vital force, a spirit. There's a spirit in the tree. There's a spirit in the stones, and the earth is the Gaia, the mother, and it's possible that she is an organism and we're just all little individual cells. That's possible. Very interesting. So
there is a theory called Gaia as well, in terms of the environment that we're in, and Gaia will rebalance and things like that. Some people take it to extreme, but this idea that we're all interconnected is certainly a very powerful idea, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's possible. I mean, maybe it is. So, James Lovelock's Gaia. But the thing, I think if I explain it like this, it might resonate. So, for instance, let's take the hawthorn tree, right? And I might say, let's say we walk past, and that's a hawthorn tree. The hawthorn tree. Then you walk past, and you say, "Oh, that's Crataegus. It's a Crataegus tree." And that's that. You know a little bit more about it. Then perhaps you walk past, and you know that Crataegus can help with blood pressure and with cardiac issues. And then perhaps you learn some stories about it, where it's related to a lovely legend with Joseph of Arimathea and the crucifixion and the Holy Thorn in Glastonbury. And perhaps it was related to Beltane and the marriages back in the Celtic times. And suddenly you have a relationship with this tree, and suddenly you have a friend. And then every time you go out and you see a hawthorn tree, you think, oh, there's hawthorn, it's my friend. It's my friend, the hawthorn.
Absolutely. Absolutely spot on. That's right.
You know that you can nibble its leaves because it's called bread and cheese. It's just little bits of information. Back in the day, they used to nibble the leaves. They called it bread and cheese because it was so nourishing. And it would get you from this village to that village without being too hungry. These are just, but you grow to have a fondness and hopefully a love. And then you start to protect nature and bring it into your life. And you join more with nature, and you bring nature more in, and you protect it. And suddenly we become, it's not this hierarchy with humans at the top, but we're all equal. The tree has intelligence. We know that. Animals have intelligence. And suddenly we're not so important anymore. And that's quite a relief as well.
Yes. I mean, we are at the end of the show. I told you it would go, Joe, in no time.
I know. We got to go now.
It just disappears. And I think that's a beautiful place to stop. This idea that one of the things I think we do as human beings when we allow ourselves to is to have these types of relationships with each other, with nature, with a hawthorn tree, with our cat, we can find fantastic multiple levels of meaning and experience in moments. And the more we do that, the better off we're going to be. It's a fact.
It's a fact, yes.
An absolute fact. And the more we do that, the better. So that was a lovely way of describing it. I think that's a beautiful story.
We also have a sense of belonging then. That's very important, no?
Absolutely.
We belong
The more
here.
we feel that we belong somewhere, and the
Yes.
safer we feel in that, the healthier we're going to be. I mean, there's masses of evidence for that now.
Yeah.
Huge amounts of evidence. And the more we objectify and disconnect, the iller we become.
That's a fact.
Really simple stuff, folks. It's really simple stuff. Look, Joe, it's been really lovely to have you on.
Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll come back and get you on again. But I did say to you we would have a moment at the end whereby you can tell people about your website, your products, your books, how they might get hold of you. So do you have a website?
Yes, my website is Botanica Medica.
Botanica Medica. Can you spell that?
It's BOTANICAMEDICA.co.uk.
Okay, great.
Botanica Medica.
And do people get hold of you through that, or are there other contact details?
They can get hold of me through that. There's a contact page. I do have products listed, but I don't sell through my website.
No, because you need to see people and diagnose them.
Yeah, or I can talk to them on the phone, but I can't. I wouldn't just.
You've got to get to know the person and find out what's of course.
Yeah. So I can have a little chat and that. And on my website, there's some books that I've written.
Yeah.
Some are more druidic, some are more home herbal medicine. My latest one, which hasn't come out now, it's soon to come out, is based on stress, burnout, and fatigue.
Oh, beautiful, wonderful. What's it called?
Nature's Remedies for Stress and Fatigue.
I'm going to buy that myself.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely. I think that's wonderful, really good resource.
Thank you.
One of the things I was saying during the pandemic, and this is why I'm excited about having you on, is we know the evidence is quite clear that psychological distress went through the roof and has not come down. And there just aren't enough qualified psychologists and psychotherapists on the planet to sort this out. And we have to go and cast our net wide and get people involved that can provide all sorts of integrations need to happen. And I think it's a really interesting moment in human history when we stop this splitting, as I see it, in helping professions, and we start to integrate them. So that we have a broader range of responses. So I'm very excited about this. I will buy your book and I will rave about it to people. So tell me what it's called again.
No, I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sorry. So we keep arguing over not arguing,
but I believe finished the title yet.
Yeah, it's something like Nature's Remedies for Stress and Fatigue by Dunbar.
Wonderful. I love the very unstressed way you have about it. I haven't decided what to call it yet. It'll come.
It's more or less the publishers. I'm sure that's what the title. I've sent you the copy. I sent you a picture of it.
And when will that be available, Joe? So that people
June.
Brilliant. Listen, thank you so much for being on, and thank you for your wonderful work helping people. It's very inspiring stuff.
Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for
pleasure for me.
A lovely host.
We'll sort of maybe once the book is out, we'll bring you back on. What do you think?
Yeah. I'd love that.
Whatever it is called eventually.
It's got a blue cover.
That's great. Have a lovely day. Wonderful to see you. Stay there, folks. What a great guest. I'm sure you would agree. And do get hold of Joe if you feel that you want some help. I'll sort of see you all at the next show. So goodbye for now.